everyone, and welcome to another episode of Biblio Files. This is the program on AADL TV, where we take some time each episode to discuss one book topic. Today's topic is a book that is about your favorite explorer or adventurer. And my name is Lucy. As usual, I'm here with Christopher and Amanda, and I am really interested to hear what you picked. So, Amanda, what did you choose?
So I feel like I don't read a lot of books that feature adventurers or explorers, be it nonfiction or fiction, but one of my favorite youth fiction authors writes solely adventure and explorers. So I chose one of those novels. This is called The Good Thieves. It's by Katherine Rundell, and she is one of my favorite authors of youth fiction. And she writes a lot of historical, and she always has a very plucky, smart, brave 12-year-old usually female protagonist off on an adventure, saving the day and making her life better for herself and those around her. And in this story is no different. Our young protagonist is named Vita. And Vita and her mother leave London and head to Manhattan. It is the 1920s, and they are there to visit her grandfather. Her grandfather's mansion has been sold and bought by a real estate tycoon. And her grandfather is just broken. He is half the man he was the last time they saw him. But he is enamored with his granddaughter, Vita. He calls her Rapscallion, and they have a wonderful little relationship. But Vita being Vita, and this being a Katherine Rundell novel, there's adventure. Vita decides that the mansion was actually stolen from her grandfather. So Vita decides that she needs to steal back the mansion and put everything back to the way it was. So Vita needs help, and she meets a couple of kids in the city. It's 1920s. It's a ragtime. It's not magical realism at all. It's straight fiction. But these kids are running around Manhattan at night doing all kinds of things they shouldn't be doing, as they do in every Katherine Rundell novel, but it is delightful. So Vita meets a young pickpocket. She gets a couple kids that are in a visiting circus in town. And so the little ragtag group of misfits brings different skills to the team. So she and her team, they head off to the castle to try to, get the castle back for her grandfather. But of course, there are some bad guys, some ne'er-do-wells that are chasing them around town. It's just so delightful. This little girl is she's such a great character. She's clever and witty and smart. She's very good at throwing things and hitting the target. So that's sort of the special skill that she brings to the task. So her and her crew, they become the good thieves because they are stealing back what was stolen from them. So it's okay to do so. It is okay to be not so sensible. Like her mother always demands that Vita is. Their lives need to be sensible. They need to be sensible. But sometimes it's okay to be a good thief and to be not sensible. So that is young Vita, and this is The Good Thieves. It has a wonderful ending. It's such a great novel. It's great for middle grade. I recommend this author for all ages because the writing is just so beautiful and amazing. It doesn't talk down to you as an adult reader, and it just takes you someplace when you read these adventures, these novels by her, and I just adore them. So this is The Good Thieves and by Katherine Rundell. Christopher, what adventurers or explorers did you bring to share with us?
Well, it may not be a surprise, but I picked the last book by Jon Krakauer that I have not read yet, and it's his latest book. It's Classic Krakauer.
Ooh.
This is a collection of previously published essays on surfing, spelunking, hardcore survival hiking, and mountaineering. The real-life people that Krakauer writes about often face the dangers of nature, and nature takes the form of a brutal and uncaring God that more often than not destroys them. This could take the form of a 150-foot drop from a rock wall, or a 50-foot wave, or a 350-pound grizzly bear. Normally, I'm not into these kind of macho endeavors that Krakauer writes about. I think that freezing to death or dying in a cave would be terrible ways to go. So I'm not sure why exactly I'm so drawn to Krakauer's writing. but it's probably because he's such an engaging writer and just eminently readable. He also infuses a lot of morals in his stories about respect for nature and the relationships between people. So that is classic Krakauer and highly recommended. Lucy, what did you pick for us this time?
So I chose a graphic novel. Surprise, surprise. This is called First Man, Reimagining Matthew Henson. And it is the sort of true story of Matthew Henson, who was a servant to Robert Peary. Robert Peary is the man who's credited for discovering the North Pole. And the author of this book, the illustrator and author of this book, Simon Schwartz, was doing an article on polar expeditions, and he came across a picture of a man, and the caption underneath read, "Robert Peary's faithful black servant, Matthew Henson." And this sort of was like, whoa, I've never heard of this person. And so he started to really do some research, and he discovered that Matthew Henson was a man born to two sharecropping parents, and he had a really interesting life. There wasn't tons of information out there at the time that Schwartz was researching him, which is also not surprising. So this is where the nonfiction fictional part comes in. There are some pieces that he sort of imagined, and he wanted to be very clear up front, like, I'm not writing a straight biography because I can't presume to know, exactly what happened. But he discovered in his research that Henson actually reached the North Pole before Robert Peary. And this made the author really mad at the historical injustice, and he became to admire Henson the more and more he learned about him. And so this book tells the story of Henson in different ways. It tells about his explorations with Robert Peary. It fast forwards to him in the future when he's working at a history museum, and then it goes back and forth between these two things. The author also learned during his research that Henson sort of became part of Inuit mythology. He was a mystical figure called Mari Pollock, and this is because when they were on their explorations, he took the time to get to know the Inuits. He learned their language, so they really came to actually love him and respect him, and they really believed that he was sort of this mystical figure. And because of that connection, Matthew Henson was really a key to the success of the endeavor in exploring the North Pole. But we are never really told that. And I think this is a really interesting thing about history that this book points out very well, is that history is provided to you by the people who tell it to you. And in this case, we think that Peary discovered the North Pole because that's the story that Peary himself put out there. And he worked pretty hard to falsify other people's accounts. There was no way that Matthew Henson could really prove that he'd been there, and no one probably would have listened to his story anyway. So this was also a great genre, I think, to write this book in, because it lends to like the exploration adventure piece of it. And it's really in grayscale for the most part, except for there's like some pale blue as well. And then the other great thing about having it be a graphic novel is that because the Inuits believed that Henson was actually this mythical figure, the illustrator uses these spirit masks a lot, and he'll just put them in. And so he can like switch in one page, between actual Henson and then the mythical being that he is. And so I thought that was a really neat depiction. And it's just a great book that kind of combines fact and fiction, and it has these dual timelines, which is very interesting. And it tells the story of this man whose story now has been told more, and he was finally recognized posthumously, I think. So it's just good to dig a little bit, I think, in history and find out that there were other people exploring than the people who tell us that they are the ones that found what they found. So that is First Man, Reimagining Matthew Henson, and that is by Simon Schwartz. We had 3 very different books today. which is great. We had like straight nonfiction, fiction, and then sort of a mix. So that's cool. Does anyone else have any thoughts about adventurers or explorers? All right, well, that is it for us. Thank you so much again for joining us. And as always, we love to hear what you're reading. If you have a favorite adventurer or explorer or a book you've read that's full of adventure, we'd love to know it. You can add your comment below, and we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.